Are carbs bad for you? Well, that's a complex question, and there are no simple answers. Today on Healthy Looks Great on You, I'll tell you how to love your body even if it loves carbs. There's a lot of noise in healthcare, and you are too busy for fads. I'm Dr. Vickie, and this is Healthy Looks Great on You, a lifestyle medicine podcast, life tested, doctor approved. Carbs get a bad rap, and no, I am not talking about a flour tortilla wrap. I'm talking about one of the big three nutrients that your body requires to function: protein, fat, and carbohydrates. Your macronutrients. And spoiler alert, you need all three. Let me say that again. A healthy diet includes carbs, protein, and fat. And trying to eliminate any one of them completely just isn't necessary and can actually work against you. You need a balanced diet. But what is a balanced diet anyway? And once we define it, can you actually stick to it? Turns out nothing about carbs is simple, except maybe simple carbs. Here's a fun fact. The U.S. government has been issuing dietary guidelines for over 100 years. And back then, they didn't share them with memes or reels on Facebook or Instagram. They used pamphlets and posters. And then, in 1980, the Department of Health and Human Services and the USDA teamed up to publish the very first dietary guidelines for Americans. And the goal was to provide science-based evidence to help support public health. And just in case you thought this was uniquely American, about 90 countries around the world issue their own dietary guidelines. And guess what? They mostly say the same thing. Most of the world agrees that we should eat a varied, balanced diet based mainly on fruits and vegetables, whole grains, seeds and nuts, and healthy oils, with meat and dairy in moderation. Nobody thinks French fries or Fruit Loops or cola count as health foods, even if you switch out the sugar, dye, or oil. Take the cover off of a book, and you've got the same story inside. The problem is that knowing is not the same thing as doing. And maybe you believe that other countries are healthier and leaner than we are in the United States, but just because we all have similar guidelines just doesn't mean that we follow them. It might help if we got back to the basics. I'll put a link to the government's current dietary guidelines website in the show notes, the one with the My Plate visual aid. And you can plug in your age, sex, and activity level and get a customized general plan. And that's the foundation. But let's zoom in on carbs because that's where the controversy usually brews. So, how many carbs should you eat? Well, according to the United States guidelines from 2020, you should get 45 to 65% of your calories from carbohydrates, 10 to 35% of your calories from protein, and 20 to 35% from fat. That's a big range. Should you be closer to 45% or 65% on the carbs? Well, that depends on your activity level, your age and health status, and your risk for certain diseases. But the bare minimum is around 25%. But honestly, how many of us are doing math before we chew? Unless you're on a program or working with a dietitian, most of us are just picking up a fork, not a calculator. I live in the real world, and math has always been my least favorite subject. The only thing I'm weighing these days is whether I'm hungry enough for seconds. Now, I want to tell you about my brief career as a food weigher. Once upon a time, I did buy one of those little food scales. I was trying to limit my protein because my kidneys had taken a big hit from a medication. And I used that scale about 3 times before it lived in my cabinet for 3 years, and then it went on to appliance heaven. Do you have any idea how tiny 2 ounces of anything is? Exactly. Now, if you have kidney disease, you do need to limit your protein, or if you have diabetes and you need to watch your carbohydrates, please follow your healthcare provider's advice. But for the average person who doesn't want to live by food math, let's talk some practical, no calculator needed advice. Sounds good? Okay, let's start with the assumption that you want a balanced diet. You're aiming to get roughly half of your fuel from carbohydrates because that's your body's main source of energy. So, why all the controversy? Well, because not all carbs are created equal. You've got simple carbs, complex carbs, and fiber. And maybe that's why nutrition seems so complex, but it doesn't have to be. Most Americans do, in fact, get about half their calories from carbs. And the percentage is actually trending slightly downward. But since we've already decided math and chewing don't mix, let's just take a different approach and focus on quality over quantity. Choose carbs that love you back. Eat whole foods. That means fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Eat more of those. Less sugar, salt, and saturated fat. Carbs are not bad, but the type of carb matters greatly. Complex carbohydrates are found naturally in whole grains, and fiber is found, remember, only in plants, fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, and whole grains. But here's the deal. Even processed grains do contain some nutrients. The next time you look at a loaf of white bread, check the label, and it will say enriched because the nutrients were stripped out during processing, then they added some back in. Why even bother enriching foods? Well, because even though people don't follow the guidelines and eat whole grains, they do eat bread and they eat cereals like Lucky Charms. And fortifying those foods has been a huge public health success story, especially in preventing neural tube defects in babies' brains and spines. So yes, processed grains offer some nutrition. Whole grains will always get you more. And remember, multigrain is just a marketing term. Ignore the front of the box and flip to the back to get the real story. Now let's talk sugar. Simple sugars occur naturally in foods like fruit, but refined sugars, that's a different story. They're added to drinks, desserts, and even your favorite protein bar. You've got to stay alert and read those labels. I did that this morning. One of my favorite breakfasts is a big old bowl of Cheerios. And by big old, I mean Jethro-sized. Cheerios are made with whole grains, 1 gram of added sugar, 2 grams of fiber, and 5 grams of protein. Then I added a handful of blueberries for a dab more fiber and a dab more natural fructose and a dab more protein, and I topped it off with unsweetened soy milk, which gave me another 7 grams of protein and no added sugar. So here's my breakfast breakdown. I got 12 grams of protein just by eating a bowl of cereal with blueberries. I got 33 grams of carbs, which included 6 grams of fiber and 1 gram of added sugar. And I got 7 grams of fat, which was mostly unsaturated, which is not bad for a doctor who hates math. Now let's compare that to yogurt and berries because I know you love your yogurt. Depending on the brand, that bowl might contain between 33 and 87 grams of carbs. That's a lot. And anywhere from 11 to 55 grams of simple sugar. Much of it is added. Now, the protein can vary between 11 and 24 grams, and the lesson is, be careful. Read the labels. Where? That's right, on the back, not the front. And the goal is balance. When you combine carbohydrates with fat and protein in your meal, like I did this morning, you stabilize your blood sugar and feel full longer. And since I mentioned blood sugar, let's have a mini medical school moment. When you eat carbs with protein and fat, digestion slows down. And that means that the insulin levels do not spike as high, you get fewer energy crashes, and less hangry behavior towards your coworkers. And not all sugars are created equal either. The fructose in a grape is very different from high fructose corn syrup in soda. And even if you decide to swap it out for cane sugar instead of corn syrup, it's still not the same as fruit. White bread at least gives you a little calcium, potassium, and some B vitamins, but a sugar-sweetened beverage? No redeeming qualities. Oh, before you reach for that electrolyte drink, check that label too. Which side? Yes, the back. I see a hand raised in the back of the class. What do you need? A hall pass? Oh, you don't get enough fiber, you can't go to the bathroom. Well, that's a different problem. A permission slip? Well, sure, you have full permission to eat carbs. as long as you make wise choices. Now, let's look at the fiber factor very quickly. Here's the deal. If you eat foods that love your body, those that are high in fiber and minimally processed, you'll stay satisfied longer. You'll keep your gut healthy and naturally manage your weight. And yes, if you get enough fiber, you will need that hall pass to go to the bathroom. Fiber helps you feel full, keeps your gut microbiome happy, and bonus, makes your doctor proud. All of the cardiologists and gastroenterologists just said amen. If you eat good carbs, you'll have fewer cravings, fewer binges, and more energy. Got it? Okay, let's try a visual. Picture a sliding scale. On one end, you've got donuts and soda, and on the other, you've got fruits and vegetables. And in between, you've got some foods with added sugar, but also with some nutrients. Try just sliding that scale towards the healthy side. Feed your body more of what's good for it and less of what isn't. I always say, fill up on the good stuff. And that is especially good advice when we're heading into the holidays where your Aunt Edna is practically force-feeding you pecan pie. Go into the dessert season satisfied and full of fiber-filled carbs, and you'll have less room for Karo syrup. And don't forget the rock star of carbs, beans. They are jam-packed with both protein and fiber and vitamins and minerals, and they are gentle on your cardiovascular system and great for your gut. So move in the right direction, one meal at a time. And if you're ready to take small, practical steps towards a healthier body with less belly fat, and you don't want to count or weigh or memorize a nutrition chart, then join me for my Kickstart to Healthy Habits in 7 days. You'll learn how to build lasting habits that fuel your energy, shrink belly fat, and help you actually enjoy your food again, including the carbs. There's a link in the show notes to sign up, or you can just visit my website, healthylooksgreatonyou.com. Until next time, love your body, love your carbs, because healthy looks great on you. The information contained in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not considered to be a substitute for medical advice. You should continue to follow up with your physician or healthcare provider and take medication as prescribed. Though the information in this podcast is evidence-based, new research may develop and recommendations may change.